Hello, everybody. I'm Phil Brandt, President and CEO of AIM Employers Association, and welcome to This Week at Work.
Welcome to This Week at Work, the only show to pack workplace news, practical HR solutions, and timely insights into every 30-minute episode.
A lot of people are working remotely still, and we've all had somebody say to us, they're just not doing the job. It feels like they've got something else going on. There's a Texas-based company that said they hired a remote employee as an account executive, and he secretly continued working for his former employer.
I suspect there's more of that going on than we realize.
Yeah.
There's a lot of suspicion of, I'm not sure if they're not working two jobs.
Exactly. This takes it to the next level.
This Week at Work brings you the conversations that matter most to HR professionals and business leaders like you. Brought to you by AIM Employers Association and Ogletree Deakins, live every Thursday morning. This is your opportunity to connect with their experts and ask your burning questions. So what's keeping you up at night? Let's face it together now on This Week at Work.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. Good morning, Burt. How are you?
Good morning, Phil. How are you today?
I'm doing great. We got a good program this afternoon. We're going to talk about Proposition A for the state of Missouri with a pretty large audience. And I think you're in New York, are you?
I am. I wish I could be there. I know you and I were planning on doing this one together, but Melissa Pesch from my office is more than capable of filling in, and I'm a little worried your members are going to like her more than they like me.
We love Melissa. She's been on the program before. We're happy to have her. She does a great job. But no one would ever replace you, Burt. Hey, I want to go set the stage a little bit. So last week after the program, you and I were having a quick conversation following the Lawyer on the Clock segment. And you shared with me some information about this topic that we're going to talk about today, remote work. Can you kind of just set the stage and share that story with the audience real quick?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, the case we're talking about is down in Texas, and the Texas-based technology company accused a Massachusetts employee. They hired a remote account executive last year, and they accused him of secretly continuing his employment with a direct competitor. I mean, this amps up the whole concept of moonlighting on a second job to an entirely new level as far as I'm concerned. The company alleges that the dual employment, not surprisingly, violated his contractual obligations and compromised confidential information. And of course, that case would underscore the challenges employers face in managing remote workers and protecting proprietary data.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine, right? I can't even get my head around this. So I'm working for one company, maybe in sales or whatever it is, and then I'm working for my competitor in the very same field, selling the very same things. That is, how does someone do that consciously? I mean, that's just stealing. I can't get my head around that.
Yeah, seriously, it just highlights how much remote work has flipped the traditional office dynamic on its head. Companies really have to rethink everything, how they hire, how they manage, even how they build trust with employees who could literally be working from a beach somewhere, or in this case, working for the other team. In this one in particular, Phil, the employee, just to make it clear, when he took this new job with this competitor of his original employer, he didn't resign from the original employer. And not only that, with the new company, when he was getting leads for the new company, he was funneling those leads back to his original company that he never resigned from. So,
oh my goodness.
Yeah. I mean, it's really quite astounding.
Yeah. Obviously we don't advocate those types of things. You get people who steal money from their companies or stealing time. In this case, I don't even know what category that goes into, some kind of moonlighting. But I remember when moonlighting wasn't really even allowed, when I started working in the 80s, I mean, you would sign, there was in your handbook, there's no moonlighting. And I was like, what's moonlighting? I didn't know what moonlighting was. I thought that was just called hustling, right? It's like, hey, I'm leaving here. I'm going to my second job and doing those types of things. But nevertheless, remote. Go ahead.
Yeah, I will say I think over time a lot of employers have softened over that, and they have policies that do allow employees to perform some sort of other work, so long as that other work does not interfere with their ability to perform their regular job for the one employer.
Right.
So, a lot of employers in more recent years have backed off the idea of you literally prohibiting somebody from doing any side job, or as you called it, a side hustle. And if somebody's working a factory job and then they want to work at a gas station on the weekends or something like that, that's permitted, so long as the work at the gas station would not interfere with the work that they're doing for their main employer.
Yeah, no, that doesn't surprise me. I've heard about it. There's, many stories about people holding down two jobs, but that one's unique in the sense that it's the same job for competing companies.
Yep.
That's really quite interesting.
And
So, but
and
let's just go ahead.
I'll also add that as of now, as of right now, the original company has not been sued by the second company. I think what they'll obviously do in that case is see if they develop evidence that the original company knew that this guy was part of a plot to go get a job with the second company and then funnel the leads back to the original company. But that's really quite a strange case. I know there's been a lot since remote work. We're hearing a lot about it with related to government employees, suspicions that a lot of government employees who aren't showing up for their government jobs may have other employment. And so it has been in the news quite a bit recently, but I think this one takes it to a whole new level where the person went to a competitor and then funneled those sales leads back to the original company.
Yeah. One way to help manage that, Bert, just one way to help, doesn't solve it, is bring them back to the office. Get them
Yes.
right there under your nose. Now, I know a lot of people don't like that, and remote work, I don't believe, is going away anytime soon. My son is taking a different job, and he's going to do some remote work in his role. And I do get it, and I understand it. Anyone that's listened to the program knows I don't like any part of it. But there is logic in it, and we do have employees that work remotely, and they do a great job for us. And I would rather them work for us than not. However, I don't like it. But let's just have some fun before we get to lawyer on the clock.
Sure.
And let's just dive a little bit deeper into this topic. I got some questions I'm going to ask you, and I'll give you 3 correct answers. Any of the answers are reasonably correct.
Oh,
and
good.
I'm just curious which ones you like, which answer you like best, and why. All right?
All right. You're taking the pressure off. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I mean, so you can't get it wrong,
Good.
but we would like to know kind of what you like, all related to remote work. All right, so the first question I have for you, Bert, is how can managers ensure remote work team members stay motivated and engaged? That's one of the challenges, right?
Yep.
And one is regular feedback, providing constructive feedback, recognition for achievement, team bonding, schedule virtual team meeting activities, or casual check-ins, or career development, offer opportunities for growth and learning through virtual training or mentorship programs.
And repeat the first one again.
Regular feedback, team bonding, career development for remote workers.
Yeah, I guess of those 3, I would pick the third one, career development opportunities for remote workers. The second one in particular, I'm not a huge fan of because in my experience, what I've heard from a lot of employers is that the employees, when you try to host team bonding exercises virtually, the employees are just bitter about it, and they get aggravated. They think it's a joke. I've heard of everything from happy hours to games, social talk, and I think that might work if you have a group of employees who had worked together for a long time and they already know each other. But if you take a bunch of people who you've hired in the last couple of years and throw them together in a virtual setting, and expecting them to gain something out of that in a virtual happy hour or virtual online games, it ain't going to happen. I think
have
that,
not seen it be that successful. And the whole idea, often when you would do team bonding where people in the office, you would often go somewhere away from the office to do it. Now everyone's away from the office and you're trying to bring them in to do it. It's just kind of backwards. And my father would call it something different backwards. I think something backwards. But anyhow,
I would say the only way that
backwards.
I would say the only way that would work is if it's a team that has all been hired remotely and no one has met each other, no one knows each other, at least, maybe just an initial, hey, this put a face to a name type of thing. I could see that as being useful, but I think you're right. It's kind of awkward.
No, I think so. I like the idea of just say, well, why don't we just all come into the office for a couple of years straight and we'll get to know each other really well and we'll become a great team. All right. Question number 2, Burt. What effective strategies for maintaining communication with remote teams? All right. So effective strategies for remote team communication, scheduled meetings, use of technology, or transparent documentation.
I would say transparent documentation should always be a feature of any workplace environment, I think. So that's not my top choice for this one. I think scheduled meetings is good because that means some accountability. And then I'll take it a step further. I would say that scheduled meetings in person would be the best way to do that. Even if it's just a lunch where you're bringing people in, bringing them together so that they get that interpersonal connection with one another. The problem with all the remote virtual team meetings and the remote happy hours and the remote games is they're just missing that interpersonal connection with one another. It's on the screen and it's just different. And there are distractions at home, and I just don't think from a team building standpoint that remote is conducive.
So you have as a shareholder with Ogletree, and lawyers, sales professionals, many executives who are managing multi-locations with customers all around the world, often are just traveling all the time, right? So that's slightly different than remote work. Like your work is remote.
Right.
That's different than remote working, but some shades of the same. Do law firms do team building?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
We do quite a bit of team building. I mean, in our office, we are hybrid. People are supposed to be in a certain number of days per week, but of course, a lot of us work remotely anyway, meaning I'm up here in New York in my New York office today. So not possible for me to be in my St. Louis office today. I am working remotely, but I'm not just hanging out at home. So some of the things we do is we have a once a month lunch with all the attorneys and the staff. We also have a monthly shareholder meeting here in St. Louis, and then even the firm more broadly, we still get together twice a year. We have a shareholder meeting in January in a city where all the shareholders, absent other work obligations, come in over a weekend, and then in the fall we have a entire firm retreat. So that we are still getting together as a firm. I mean, even with over 1,200 lawyers now, we have an all-firm retreat where 1,000 of us at any given time will be able to come in and get to know each other. We learned early on that even in a firm the size of ours, there's no substitute for that personal interaction. And so when I pass off a case or a client to somebody else in another office, I know the people who I'm passing it off to. I've had dinner with them. I've had lunch with them. I've done other cases with them. We've worked on projects together. It just makes a big difference. And I just think that there's no substitute for that interpersonal connection.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's do one more. I had 5 of them set up, but I want to do one more, and then I want to get to lawyer on the clock here. Let's see. I'm going to pick the best. Let's see. Let's just try this one because I think this one applies. I got a smart response to this one, but
All
I
right.
may not share it. How can managers address the potential feeling of isolation among remote workers? Well, I got a really wise crack to that one, and I'm not going to share it. You can just anticipate what that might be. Uh, Virtual coffee chats, the buddy system, pairing team members up for regular check-ins and mutual support, and inclusive culture, promoting inclusivity through shared celebrations and recognition of diverse contributions.
Hmm.
That's the three choices. But virtual coffee chats, the buddy system, or inclusive culture, really just bringing people together.
Yeah.
Let's consider it that way. This is for people who feel isolated. It's
Yeah.
kind of like, I can't
Yeah.
help myself. If you're feeling isolated, just go into the
I
office.
was just going to say that. I don't like any of those answers. If
Yeah.
people are feeling isolated, bring them in. It's not
Now,
healthy.
obviously, we're talking about where you have the option of going to the
Right.
office, right? We're
Yes.
making the assumption that there are people working collaboratively in an office or factory or workplace. Not everyone works remotely somewhere different in the country here,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think where you have the capability, bring them in, get them to work with one another, introduce them to each other personally. If you don't have the capability because the workforce is so spread out across the country, I do think that regular meetings where there's an agenda would be helpful. Now, it may be that after the meeting, you ask people to stick around for a virtual coffee hour or virtual happy hour or something like that, but I would make it work related on the front end.
Yeah. I like the virtual coffee chat, right? So let's just say your workday starts 8 a.m., traditionally.
Ah,
And
sure.
yeah, I said, let's just say hypothetically, it starts at 8 a.m. and people want to use, if I'm working from home, I start early because I don't have to drive into the office or whatever, all these reasons that we hear from people. In that case, I'm like, well, let's do a 7:30 to 8, just virtual, casual. You join. It's the meeting before the meeting. It's just casual coffee chat, 7:30 a.m. to 8. And I'll always be online and anyone that wants to join, and we can talk about anything that you want, just like you would if you were in the office standing around the water cooler, per se. And then, I'm sure everyone would join in. And if they don't join in, then you got nothing to complain about, right? It's like
Yeah,
we have our team bonding moment.
I think, Phil, that's not far from what I was saying earlier, though, about like a virtual happy hour. I think if you're asking people to log in early to do that type of activity and they don't really know each other, I think it's awkward. And my experience has been, personally and hearing clients with this stuff and other people I know, including maybe or maybe not my own children who've had to do stuff like this, they just get bitter. They get
Yeah.
bitter that it's intruding upon their own personal time, and it's stupid because they don't really know each other. And
Right.
I keep trying to tell my children, yeah, but the whole idea behind this, and telling other people, is the whole idea behind this is to get to know each other. And the response I get is, well, it just doesn't work like that. And I'm like, I get that. It just doesn't work like that, which is why you need to go in sometimes. It's like, so I'm
Yeah.
just sharing my own personal experiences, my own little insight, and also some client experiences in trying to develop communication strategies for remote workers.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. And I'm not poo-pooing all remote work. I get it. And there's lots of productivity and there's appropriateness to it and all that. I just find it very frustrating personally when people who want to work remotely then expect employers and I think employers feel this way many ways. When I talk about employers, like the owners, the executives, they're like, they want to engage people, they want to do these things, but doing that remotely makes it even more difficult, and it's so hard to do anyway, right?
Agree.
And we're trying to make money so that we can give people paychecks.
Right.
right? And they can support their lifestyle that way more than, well, I want to work from remote.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, good session there, Bert. You passed because you couldn't get it wrong, but I appreciate your insight. I'm ready to get to Lawyer on the Clock because I know you got a few good things there. Nick, are you ready to pull the lever?
I'm all good.
Pull the lever, buddy.
Curious about a case that could wreck your workplace? Lucky for you, we have a lawyer on the clock.
So, Phil, today I'm going to be chatting about all things related to some topics we've been focused on quite a bit lately because it's constantly in the news, and under the Trump administration, it's really become a target of their administration, but it's also been in the news.
Oh, is this the JFK files?
I've glanced at some of the JFK files.
Okay, we'll save that conversation for an upcoming episode.
Some interesting stuff in there.
Yeah.
So, all right. So anyway,
we're going to save it all. Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, the first one we've already talked about, and you'll recall that a couple weeks ago, let's see, February 26th, we talked about it right afterwards. The U.S. Supreme Court heard oral arguments in the case of AAIMS versus the Ohio Department of Youth Services. And that's a case that's going to determine whether a plaintiff bringing what's called a reverse discrimination claim, and that would be somewhere where like a majority group employee, such as a white male, alleges race discrimination or sex discrimination, whether in those cases there's a higher burden of proof than a plaintiff would have who's a member of a minority group. And I will tell you that the argument, the oral argument, it was an unusual one. I mentioned this before on the program, in that the justices, whether they've been appointed by a Republican president or a Democrat president, all kind of seem to agree that discrimination is discrimination. And it doesn't necessarily make a difference whether you're part of the majority group or part of the minority group. And so there are some circuits.
It applies equally for everyone.
Well, it does. And Nick, I don't know if you have the ability to pull it up, but I did send you the language of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of
look at that. He's pulled it up. Look at him.
There you go. And so, I think this is sort of the foundation of everything. It says it shall be an unlawful employment practice for an employer. And then it flat out says to fail or refuse to hire or to discharge any individual or otherwise to discriminate against an individual with respect to his compensation, terms, conditions, or privileges of employment because of such individual's race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. It does not call out in Title VII, the way the law exists today, it does not say that if you're white, you're not protected. It does not say that if you're a member of the Christian majority in the United States, that you're not protected. It does not say that if you're a man, you're not protected, or it does not say if you're an American, you're not protected. What it says is that you can't make employment decisions based on a person's protected characteristic. And so I think the Supreme Court, in my opinion, I think they are going to eliminate this whole idea of a reverse discrimination type of case and really stick with.
So technically, like reverse discrimination doesn't exist.
Right. And I think that's what the justices said during oral argument, is that discrimination is discrimination.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I mean, that is logical to a simple mind like mine.
Yeah. So I think that these cases, these federal circuits that have a higher burden of proof for somebody outside the quote unquote protected class, I think that standard's probably going to go away, and it becomes discrimination is discrimination. Now, the hard part I have with this, and I'll say something that'll be maybe a little provocative here, is that all of a sudden I think we get to a point where when everyone is special, when everyone is protected, then no one is special any longer. And I do think that the intent of these laws originally was to protect people who had historically suffered discrimination because of their protected characteristics. And I'm not quite sure how to rationalize those two thoughts, that everyone, the way Title VII is drafted, everyone is protected. It's not just the people who are in those minority categories. everyone is protected based on the plain language of Title VII. And again, I think that's where the Supreme Court is going. But what I can envision this leading to is that you're going to get companies who are being sued by, take, for example, their Black employees and their white employees, accusing the company of discriminating against them no matter what.
Maybe for the very same situation, right? No matter which way the organization turns,
right,
they're going to get it wrong. In someone's eyes, they may get it wrong, and they may have to defend themselves, which is going to put even more pressure on organizations to demonstrate merit.
Yes. Well, I think that that's probably the logical conclusion to it, that employers are really going to have to be very solid on what I would call their legitimate, non-discriminatory, and non-retaliatory reasons for taking some sort of an employment action, whatever that might be, and whether that's a promotion or a demotion, whether that's a hire or a termination. The employers really have to be on firm footing with their legitimate, non-discriminatory, and non-retaliatory business reasons for their actions.
Yeah, I would think it's easier today to terminate anyone with less risk, and may have less risk of discrimination, because you can line up some facts. Done right, you can line up some facts easier. Termination usually isn't as subjective in my mind through my experiences. I mean, usually it's like there's a set of conditions that were obvious that resulted in termination, and usually to some level somewhat extreme because it's pushing you to the brink. But when it comes to promotion, when it comes to merit increase, this starts to get a little bit fuzzy at times for employers to not as clearly be able to identify the differentiators that lead to a promotion or higher pay, lesser pay, someone gets more, someone gets less. And that seems to be where maybe more risk may lie as we move forward than termination, because it's easier to frame the situation that resulted in termination.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you from the standpoint, Phil, that when there's a precipitating event that leads to a termination, or a discrete event that leads to the termination that's easily identifiable, I think I would agree with you. If you get to a termination, though, that's a sort of a cumulative result of a long period of poor performance, that's where I think some of that subjectivity comes in, and it may not be that different from those other merit increases, et cetera, or non-merit and no increases because of lack of merit. I think that again, I think what employers really need to focus on is, again, that legitimate, non-discriminatory, non-retaliatory business reason for taking whatever action they're taking. And I think you're right. I think that merit is the safest approach for that. And that gets back to having good job descriptions, that gets back to doing evaluations, gets back to providing feedback, and it gets back to good documentation by the employer.
Yeah, and it allows us, maybe to stay away from, well, I just kind of like this person better, or, I just kind of felt a little bit more connected to this candidate than that candidate.
Yeah.
And have to be a little bit more solid. I'm seeing maybe there's a comment here. Let's see. Question here is, why is a remote work gripe session? Well, okay. Why is a remote work gripe session when the title is leadership in, help me read this here, is leadership in the new work reality? Why can't you put your personal feelings aside and lead the discussion? Help me with that, Burt. Do you understand?
I'm not sure I understand that one, Phil, but I do have to tell you, maybe the audience member can rephrase that. We'll get to it next week, but I have a very hard stop at 8 o'clock because I have to get into it.
We are right at 8 o'clock.
But before we go, Nick, if you could put up two links for everybody, I would appreciate that. People might need to refresh something. But yesterday, the EEOC and the Department of Justice came out with two pieces of guidance for employers. And I want to stress that this is guidance. It does not have the effect of law. And what these are is two pieces that that they put out where they said that they're advising workers to look out for DE&I based bias. And it gives guidance explaining how workers can recognize and report bias tied to diversity, equity, and inclusion programs as part of the Trump administration's effort to target those practices across public and private workplaces. They put out a question and answer and also another piece of guidance. And what they're trying to do is to say that that this needs to stop. Again, we kind of go back to the way Title VII was written. If employers are making decisions based on protected characteristics and establishing quota systems, then technically those such programs might be illegal. And so you need to be careful when going down this road, as we've urged people many times in the past. And I just want to read, if I can get my computer to cooperate here, bear with me one second. I just wanted to read one of these questions and answers for our audience here, and then I will have to split. But for example, question number 10, can an employer's DE&I training create a hostile work environment? And the EEOC's answer to that is Title VII prohibits workplace harassment, which may occur when an employee is subjected to unwelcome remarks or conduct based on race, sex, or other protected characteristics. Harassment is illegal when it results in an adverse change to a term, condition, or privilege of employment, or it is so frequent or severe that a reasonable person would consider it intimidating, hostile, or abusive. Depending on the facts, an employee may be able to plausibly allege or prove that a diversity or other DEI-related training created a hostile work environment by pleading or showing that the training was discriminatory in content, application, or context. And so this is a really significant change from the EEOC, of course, from prior administrations. But again, I think we need to go back and look at that Title VII language and recognize again that Title VII protects all employees from having protected characteristics form the basis of an employment-related decision.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Burt, I know you got to go, and we are past our time, so we'll be back here at 7:30. I got to go help Melissa, who's standing in for you, do the Proposition A for the state of Missouri program that we have here in just a little bit. Until then, go out and be good to someone. We'll see you next week at 7:30. Bye-bye.
Thank you once again for tuning in to This Week at Work. If you enjoy the show, please like it, share it, and make sure it's on your calendar. If you're an on-demand viewer, don't forget you can be part of the show by watching live at 7:30 a.m. Central every Thursday morning, when you can get your burning questions answered by using the question mark icon to the right of the player. In fact, you can ask a question now. Head over to aimea.org. Under Member Resources, you'll find This Week at Work. Click Listen Live to register for our next episode and submit a question. Or follow or subscribe wherever you get your news and entertainment. We'll see you next week when we discuss what's happening this week at work.